Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and today we're looking at BattleTech lore, the 500 Years of the Age of War by Sven Vanderplank. Now, last time around, we finally got to the giant stompy mechs, and I'm happy with that, because there's two things I love in BattleTech: giant stompy mechs and giant F-off warships, which honestly, I get a little taste of here and there, but they're freaking cool! Yeah, I know, me geeking out over giant stompy things, who'd have thought? More importantly, this time around, we get to see those giant stompy things in a giant battle, because we've had skirmishes, which actually are very similar to what happens later on in most of the BattleTech eras that people play in. Now we get to see what it's looking like when you have an army moving. And this is going to be like the first major assault, and I'm freaking excited, Matt. I want to see just how this goes. I don't think it'll be a play-by-play, but this is going to be more of the overall scope of how things play out, and I want to know more. It's kind of like why I'm watching this stuff in the general sense. I know, weird. More importantly, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up, and let's get started.
Our BattleMech construction facilities on Hesperus have a long and storied history, going back to their very inception. Over the past 250 years, no fewer than 13 major battles have been fought for the control or destruction of these mountain complexes.
Only 13?
But 300 years before even the first of those, Hesperus was the site of a major Lyran covert operation, the success of which would change the course of history.
Oh, to steal
Hesperus
stuff.
was at the time a jointly owned world shared between the Federation of Sky and the Terran hegemony. With the advent of the BattleMech, the hegemony needed secure sites to construct these behemoths. That they chose somewhere outside of their own borders at first seems absurd, but the fact that these facilities would survive the collapse of the Star League and the ravages of the Succession Wars just goes to show that they chose wisely.
Oh, so this place is still in use in current time. That's actually impressive. You think after the first time it fell and they knew about, or was this place secret throughout all of that? Definitely need to look that up.
The Lyran Intelligence Corps immediately began efforts to infiltrate the facility and steal the plans, but their efforts were blocked at every turn. When Catherine Steiner abdicated in favour of her son Alistair, the new Archon began formulating plans that would take a more direct approach to acquiring the blueprints.
Oh.
It was February 7th, 2455.
I just realized they're playing into the meme. They're being stealthy in the Steiner way. If no one's left alive, no one can report it. Because they tried actual stealth that didn't work, so they're going full scout squad. Oh my god, it's not even intended as a meme, but it perfectly fits it.
One of the last outbound dropships of the day was departing when suddenly an explosion illuminated the night sky.
Oh.
The dropship had suffered a major malfunction and was now plummeting to Earth. Its trajectory was quickly calculated as crashing into the compound. The alarm was raised and the night staff at the BattleMech facility was frantically evacuated, while the pilot fought to slow the descent. Aboard the ship, the occupants held on for dear life and prayed that their pilot was up to the job he'd been hired for.
Was this intentional
hoping
or
all
not?
the while that their deliberate detonation wouldn't be followed with a fiery explosion upon impact with the ground. As fate would have it, the crew was able to arrest their downwards momentum just as the ship disappeared behind the high mountain walls.
Was the ship intentionally taken down by someone in the ship, or was it shot down as a distraction? I'm trying to figure out if it's a Trojan horse or just a flat-out distraction. It could go either way at this point.
And touched down safely, if somewhat ungracefully. Disembarking, a crack team of 25 LIC operatives led by Colonel Simon Kelsois hurriedly made their way into the now deserted facility and began to hack into the mainframe. The hegemony guards quickly realized something was amiss and approached the miraculously intact dropship, only before a second detonation utterly destroyed the dropship and much of the surrounding area.
And that is the general war crimes of it. Yeah, I'm assuming that was a civilian ship. No, actually, it's on this facility. It's at least military personnel, probably. But at the same time, first one to get it down, but not so bad they can't control it. Second one, because who needs survivors? Like I said, they're going full scout squad.
This bought the infiltration team enough time to copy 90% of their target files before the order was given to withdraw, whereupon they escaped into the mountains. A short time later, they regrouped at a civilian starport and boarded a second freighter, headed deeper into Lyran space. Operation Prometheus was a success. With the BattleMech plans now in their possession, the Lyrans became only the second nation to field the latest technological advancement and immediately began construction of their own units. These would see their combat debut on Nordic in 2459, where Captain General Gerok Manek became the first leader of one of the great houses to die at the hands, or in his case feet, of a BattleMech.
Oh, it stomped him?
Alistair knew that there was a lot to be gained from his nation's new technological advantage, but also understood that continued proliferation of BattleMech technology was inevitable. The Federated Suns soon came knocking, seeking a trade agreement that would grant them access to the stolen data.
So is this when they start really establishing relations between these two nations? I mean, I guess that makes sense. I always figured it would be something else rather than, hey, we want to buy shit up. No, Steiner, that makes perfect sense, actually.
Recognizing that there was little to fear from this distant nation, the savvy Lyrans were able to charge an extortionate
because
fee
they'll be
that would
fighting
bolster
their neighbors more likely than anything
Furthermore, Davian mechs would soon become a thorn in the side of their rivals, the Curitans.
And technically,
Recognizing the
Lao
danger,
and
the Draconis Combine organized their own
Merrick
raid
as
on
well.
the new Lyran construction facilities on Coventry. Theirs was a more direct assault, but was nonetheless successful, and so now 4 of the nations had the tech. The retributions for the failure to defend the compound were severe, spreading a discontent among the workers that would ultimately lead to certain of them defecting to the Free Worlds League, bringing with them the valuable blueprints. The League
So they fucked around with the people so badly that they took the tech they didn't want to lose to someone they assumed would finally get it, but not from them. Yeah, that actually makes sense.
in turn would suffer its own defections to the Capellan Confederation sometime after.
Wow, people actually
Even the
defected
periphery
Capella?
nations got in on the act.
No, they're
the
different at
Rimworld's
this point.
Republic had actually contributed to Operation Prometheus, and though they lacked complete schematics, they hit the ground running once they were finally able to secure the missing pieces.
Oh. Oh, now that is an interesting detail. Because at this point, if Project Prometheus is in there doing battle mechs, that means all of the bullshit has already gone down that may or may not have sent the first Amaris, or, well, the first Amaris in the Free Worlds League, not Free Worlds League, wow, Rimworld Republic over here before they definitely, coincidentally, started taking over after befriending the leader who just happened to die. I mean, I don't exactly know the timeline. I know he's mentioned times. I just suck at that. Dates just go right over my head. But this is actually very interesting. Did the plan to steal it happen before or after the Amaris entered the scene? That thing here is I'm trying to figure out, is this something BattleTech actually has lore rationale for, such as, yeah, this is all actually manipulation by the Amaris in their continued bid to try and weaken the hegemony because fuck you? Or is this just them helping out under the previous one because, hey, if they're taking care of all the other bullshit, they'll ignore us? Which is probably a good thing because one of them is Kurita, and I mean, in general, if Kurita's right next to you, you kind of are going to focus on them because they'll make it a point.
Pieces. Recognizing that the time to act was now, while the other nations were still in the early stages of development, Alistair began preparing for what would become known as the Long March campaign. Lyran battlemechs first descended on the border worlds of Nox, Scondia, and Trolloc Prime, easily
they started on
scattering
Kurita
the Cretan
instead
defenders.
of Free World.
The next major target was Caldria, but here they faced more stubborn resistance. The DTMS had dug into the mountains, and repeated assaults had failed to dislodge them. As the death toll mounted, Lyran commanders began to discuss the unspeakable. One final assault was attempted that saw an elite group of MechWarriors scale the near vertical mountain walls to attack from the rear, but an ambush.
They scaled a vertical wall in mechs? These were not light mechs at this time. Unless there was a bunch of advancements and this is a much further time than I thought. This is literally taking a bunch of Mackies and shoving their hands into a cliff to climb, or are they actually just that nimble? No, it's a Mackie. They don't even have 2 hands. How the hell did they do that?
Ambush caught the entire unit by surprise and they were summarily destroyed. By doing so, the Curitan commander had just signed the death warrant for his entire garrison. The Steiner troops withdrew to a safe distance and watched as nuclear missiles rained down on the complex, obliterating the occupants.
Remember that entire thing about the convention that's definitely Geneva and it binds everyone? Yeah.
Leaving nothing behind at the once mighty fortifications. The Long March campaign was a 2-front war, however, and fighting was every bit as fierce on the Free Worlds front.
So they literally were going
Here,
after
things
all their
progressed
enemies.
at a slower pace, but the Lyrans were able to make some advances. The invasion would finally come to a halt during their attempts to retake the world of Alula Borealis, one of those captured by the bloodthirsty giant Gerok Manik. Here the fighting would continue for years, but it was the arrival of fresh Free Worlds League military reinforcements that turned the tide.
Oh?
The Lyran troops got a bitter taste of their own medicine when lumbering over the hills towards them came the first of the Marek battlemechs.
So they actually had mechs at this time. Honestly, Operation Prometheus to steal it, cool. The Long March, I thought that would be like this giant wave of mechs as they're pumping them out before anyone else did. No, it's more, we got a bunch of planets before anyone else had a chance, and then it stalled out, which is basically a lot of BattleTech's history when it comes to this stuff. Ooh, wow. Also, I love that art with the, looks like an orbital strike. No, there's a trail behind it. I have no idea what that is, but it's cool looking, man.
Robert Kurita, the warmongering coordinator of the Draconis Combine, was assassinated in 2412, bringing to an end his reign of misdeeds. Though it was never proven, the common belief is that it was orchestrated as a revenge killing by his sister Marika, as retribution for killing her lover, Werner von Rose, a stable boy who had been deemed to be beneath her station. Marika was already...
Yeah, I'm going to take that as headcanon. Also, wow, they have stable boys? I mean, I know they're going for like the entire honorable thing, but that's very old school.
Pregnant at the time, and shortly before the Age of War began, gave birth to Nahongi von Rose, named for his grandfather, who shared a love of horses. Raised from birth to have a deep hatred of the ruling Kurita line, the child would in time come closer to extinguishing the Kurita family than either of their long-term rivals, the Davians and Steiners, have ever been. In Robert's place rose his brother Parker, an uninspired leader who achieved little of note during his time as coordinator. It was perhaps because of this that Nahongi was able to begin winning the support of several military officers with talk of ousting Parker. The death of the third brother, Saigo, during a raid on Vega in 2419 created somewhat of a succession crisis. Though illegitimate, Nahongi was now the closest blood relative to Parker, and next in line for the throne. Only a single thing now stood in his way, the support of a major Kurita backer. Decades earlier, the Urizen branch of the Kurita family had established themselves as the military governors of the...
Wait, there's actually just a planet named Rasalhague? Or Rasalhague? Huh. I know this is going to sound weird, but I literally never noticed that. I'm assuming it changed names later on, just isn't something I noticed.
Principality of Rasalhague. A significant portion of the population had always chafed under the rule of a foreign realm, however, and in 2375 orchestrated a terrorist bombing that saw almost the complete destruction of the Urizen branch. Jason Kurita, Urizen's great-grandson, survived the blast, but was seriously mentally scarred by the death of almost his entire family.
That would do it,
yeah! In time, he would unleash a campaign of brutality against the people he governed. Also surviving the blast was his sister, Oma, who had been whisked away by the rebels and was held in seclusion under the watchful eye of the Sorensen family. Before any demands were made, fate dealt an unexpected hand when Oma fell in love with her would-be kidnapper, eventually giving birth to
Seriously? Falling in love with the kidnapper? It's a trope, but I mean it's a trope for a reason that it actually happens.
a son, Daniel Sorensen. When Jason finally learned his sister was alive, he launched an attack to recover her from the rebels, most of whom were killed during the fighting. Grief-stricken by the death of her husband, Oma never recovered, and passed away a few years later, around the time that another illegitimate child was born, Nahongi von Rose. Jason and Nahongi fell into league together, the latter promising great rewards and power in his new government, the same favours he was offering to all of his supporters. With Jason's support, it was now time to act on his master plan. In March of 2421, as the coordinator slept, his household guard was being cycled out and new men loyal to Nahongi took to their posts. As the palace woke the next morning, they found that Parker had been sentenced and executed within a few hours during the night, and the new coordinator now sat the throne. Though some units...
That's actually the art they chose for him? I'm not gonna lie, that looks like something you put up as propaganda against them. It's like, see, this general, probably a racist stereotype? Yeah, that's who took over. Wow, this is definitely some of the 80s art they use there.
Resisted the takeover, reinforcements dispatched by Jason Kurita swiftly ensured the success of the coup. Nor was this the only killing that took place. Several co-conspirators were also summarily executed, as were certain members of the Kurita family, with many more being sent into exile. However, by sending his troops, Jason had opened up his own realm to the rebellion, and was soon facing serious opposition, helmed by none other than his nephew Daniel Sorensen. Hearing of their distant cousins' escapades, the exiled members of the Kurita family flocked to his cause, and in another twist of fate, the Rasalhague rebels became the Kurita loyalists. When Daniel came for Jason Kurita, the governor resisted arrest.
The fuck? I'm sorry. So there's actually a very good historical precedent, not only for Rasalhague being part of Kurita, but being in charge of Kurita. And during this time period, they are actually more Kuritan than Kurita. Was never expecting to see that.
And tried to shoot his nephew, but was in turn killed by Sorensen. He now rose to prominence as the new Lord of Rasalhague, and once again the realm was a free and independent nation. Unfortunately for the citizens of the Draconis Combine, their lives became one of constant terror under the police state of the Von Rohs.
That
Shortly
sounds
after
more
his
familiar.
ascension, Nahongi took to
Wow,
styling
that I thought that
himself
was
purely
doing
by
for.
his family name, a trait that he would pass on to his children and successors. Many in the Combine today could not even tell you how many Von Roh coordinators there were, as the entire family withdrew into seclusion and ruled without contact with the outside world.
Oh.
The rest of the 25th century played out without much of note for us
Yeah,
historians
assassinate
to
someone if
look
you have
into.
no idea who to assassinate.
After securing plans to construct battle mechs, the Von Rohs were able to reverse the losses suffered during the Long March campaign.
Oh.
One of the chief tools in this victory was the self-styled Draconis mech, the Von Roh. By
They actually called it after
2497,
themselves?
an unusual situation had developed in the Benjamin District worlds close to the Terran hegemony. The Azami people had gradually established majority governorship of several planets and formed their own breakaway nation within the borders of the Draconis Combine. The Von Roh coordinator at the time dispatched an invasion force to subjugate these people.
They actually called themselves the coordinator to make their own nation because, oh god. Yeah, it sounds like the guys in charge though are such hated assholes and terrifying to everyone that it makes sense that people would try and leave. I'm more surprised they didn't try and join the hegemony or anyone else to get backing, but that's probably more into table stuff.
But the assault would unfold with disturbing parallels to an old Earth tale known as the War of the Worlds. As unspeakable atrocities were committed, the Draconis forces came into contact with the blood of the dead civilians. The dead bodies and the hot temperatures of the Azami worlds, coupled with the latent virus present in the blood, created a plague that would wipe out the entire invasion force down to the last man. Also during this period...
Oh. Wow, that's kind of fucked up. Also surprising considering there's so many people on so many planets and there's not more examples of, hey, this random alien bacteria doesn't interact with people. Well, also you're going to pop now because everything is going to pop as your capillaries literally combust. Have fun! Kind of surprising that isn't a bigger part of the story. I can't even say this is something that wasn't in science fiction when this came out, because these kind of concepts were around when BattleTech was being made, and the people making it were very savvy for a lot of what was going on in tech literature as well as science fiction, so that's kind of weird that there's not more notes of that.
New attempts were made to reconcile the Draconis Combine with the Principality of Rasalhague. Martin McAllister was dispatched as an ambassador to treat with Blaine Sorensen. Unexpectedly, or perhaps as Sorensen had orchestrated, he found himself falling in love with Blaine's daughter, Ileana. The love proved genuine, and in time the couple would celebrate the birth of their daughter.
That's twice now. What the fuck is it with Rasalhague at this time, or Rasalhague or whatever, and seducing Kuritans? It's like, let's be completely honest here. They're basically the French stereotype minus, well, being French. Unless they are, and I missed that.
Sidoa McAllister was born in February 24.
What is, wow. I thought the last one was bad. This one says, I have Down syndrome, but also, you look like I should eat your flesh. Nom nom.
96, and would go on to become one of the most influential individuals in the history of the Innosphere. Certainly the exploits of her life are deserving of a special focus, but for the time being she was just a child, and so for now we'll leave her out of the history, though she was present at several of the key
Probably just the
meetings and
shadow
events
on the
of this
forehead
era.
that does it.
McAllister and Sorensen meanwhile were formulating their own plans. Martin was dispatched on several lengthy trips to Rasalhague under the guise of building relations between the two realms. The Von Rohs remained oblivious to his true intentions, and he continued to work his way up the chain of command until he was one of the most powerful individuals within the Combine. Even still, Martin remained unsure whether he'd even met a member of the Von Roh household, so secretive was that ruling family.
Wait, seriously? They're that secretive? So it's not even a matter of we're just kind of secluded. It's literally you don't even know if you're part of the family or not. At what point is the big reveal that they actually married into the Kurita family by accident and no one figured it out until it was too late? And it's like, oh, by the way, we can't exterminate them because we are them. That's the level of stupidity that I would actually find hilarious. I don't think they would do it though, because this is usually a much more serious setting until it's not.
In 2508, Coordinator Yama was abruptly imprisoned and removed from office by troops loyal to McAllister. A new Von Rohr was hurriedly sworn in, but confusion reigned, as neither the new coordinator understood what charges had been laid against his brother and how he suddenly now held a position of apparent supreme power,
Seriously?
nor did the government functionaries and military leaders understand who was even the new coordinator. The Von Rohr family's grip on the Combine started to falter.
Wait, that... You know, this is so weird. If this was later in BattleTech's history, I'd say, oh, Comstar did it. But I'm assuming it's the secretive household that did. But then they fucked up somehow? Or some kind of enemy action. Actually, I might actually be the hegemony at this point, actually, for all I know.
In 2510, Blaine Sorensen unexpectedly launched a major invasion of the Combine. All available troops were dispatched to meet this attack, leaving the palace on New Samarkand open to a strike. McAllister chose this moment to assault the Coordinator's residence. With no one quite sure as to the identities of those within, a brutal purge was conducted that saw the entire population of the compound wiped out, Von Rohr and servants alike. In an instant, the family...
Because no one knows who's part of what, so it makes sense, because they might all be one or the other.
...that had ruled the Draconis Combine for almost a century was extinguished. In the aftermath, the militaries of the two powers were hastily stood down to avoid further bloodshed. Sorensen's attack had been nothing but a ruse, and Martin and Blaine met on the world of Pest to make an announcement that would shock the Combine. Many years earlier, Sorensen had insisted that McAllister take a DNA analysis, which had proven beyond a doubt that Martin was in fact a blood descendant of Shiro Kurita, the founding father of the Draconis Combine. His marriage to Ilyana meant that the two families were now bound by blood, and plans were drawn up to fully integrate the Principality of Rasalhague as a part of the Combine, achieving what Urizen had set out to do almost 200 years earlier.
They literally just randomly lucked into a blood marriage to take over the country. By accident. That's so bullshit. I'm kind of surprised Rasalhague didn't change the name just to reflect that, or maybe incorporate their symbology somehow. Or symbolism, sorry.
Blaine Sorensen was confirmed in his new position as Duke of Rasalhague. Furthermore, 6 years later, a representative from the Azami people approached McAllister, and the two groups were reconciled, those worlds also returning to the fold as a semi-autonomous region.
Surprisingly easy.
With these changes, the Draconis Combine as we would recognize it today was fully formed. Martin McAllister became the 10th coordinator.
Still surprised that they didn't lose a war or anything? They weren't taken over like that? It literally came down to, apparently you were kind of in line to take over us. Yeah, would you mind joining so it's less awkward? Yeah. I did not expect that to be how this country went away. It was like literally just because they seduced the right people by accident.
Bringing to an end the 89 years of Von Rohr reign. For the first time in history, the Combine would know peace, and though the occasional border raid would break the spell, for the Kuritan citizens, the age of war had ended early.
I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on the fact that Kurita, who is literally the mustache-twirling bad guys in almost every sense, made peace out of everyone in the Age of War first, and took over one of their neighbors that was one of their rivals, who they couldn't seem to really get a grip on due to literally a blood relation that they made by accident. The last part is still getting me because it's so unbelievable. You only see it in fiction. On the other hand, there's a reason people kept doing that kind of shit during the Dark Ages, because blood relations to freaking do alliances is a normal part of how dynasties did interact. And I'm not just talking, well, I probably even shouldn't just say the Dark Ages. That was in most imperialistic dynasties or kingdoms or feudal nations in general. Yeah. It's so off from what I'm expecting of Kurita in the normal time frames of BattleTech that hearing about it now is just... It's right up there with finding out Lao were the good guys. Yeah. And I know the next one up is the Davian Civil War, where it's like, oh yeah, hey, you know how Davians usually the plot armor, Mary Sue, good guys who just overstretch themselves, but really do care for the best. Nope, no, this time they're still the dictator assholes that are going to have that civil war. It's going to be horrible because at this point, that's the only thing I can expect. The only thing on par has been Steiner with really competent, then really incompetent, and a lot of money to throw at problems. And stealth of everyone's dead. That they're the only ones playing to type. They're the only ones so far playing to type. I'd also say that for Merrick, but just because the Free Worlds League has always been a giant clusterfuck of we don't know what the fuck's going on, and it goes back and forth all the time, and that kind of held true. So you can't really have stability when there's literally never actually any. Yeah. God damn. I love finding out just how different things are, and this is definitely highlighting that. So if you haven't already, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. And when you're done, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.